Queen Elizabeth, in fact, meeting every single serving American president except Lyndon Johnson since 1951. She had met with former Presidents Obama and Trump. Former President Obama referred to her as, quote, truly one of my favorite people. Former President Trump referred to her as a great, great woman.
70 years, 13 American presidents, one queen who never gave an interview, never shared her opinions, never revealed what she truly thought about the most powerful people on earth. Queen Elizabeth II took her secrets to the grave. But even the most disciplined ruler leaves traces. A raised eyebrow, a withheld invitation, a private joke shared with one president, a cold shoulder given to another. Over decades, these small moments add up, forming a hidden scorecard of her thoughts, judgments, and affections. Who made her laugh so hard that aides did double takes? Who committed an unforgivable social blunder and was quietly shunned? Some were welcomed into her closest circles, others were kept at arm's length. These gestures weren't random. They were deliberate signals from a woman who understood power, protocol, and discretion better than anyone alive. Today, we're peeling back the veil, decoding the Queen's silent verdict on every American president she met. And what you discover might just shock you. The fairy princess and the men who won her trust. The story begins before Elizabeth was even queen. In 1951, the 25-year-old Princess Elizabeth visited Washington, D.C. with her husband, Prince Philip. She was young, radiant, and not yet burdened by the weight of the crown. President Harry Truman was immediately enchanted. He hosted the royal couple at the White House, and afterward, he could not stop talking about her.
Queen Elizabeth, in fact, meeting President Ford at the White House. Harry Truman was her first presidential meeting.
Truman wrote to Elizabeth's mother, calling the princess a fairy princess and gushing about her poise, her warmth, and her remarkable ability to put everyone at ease. This was not diplomatic flattery. Truman was genuinely charmed. And Elizabeth, she found Truman genuinely likable. He was plain-spoken, warm, and completely unpretentious. There was no performance, no calculation, just a straightforward man from Missouri who treated her like a person rather than a symbol. It was a brief meeting, but it established something crucial: Elizabeth's template for judging American leaders. She would spend the next 7 decades sorting presidents into categories. The authentic ones who could relax in her presence, the performers who saw her as a prop, and the clueless ones who stumbled through royal protocol without understanding why it mattered. Truman set the standard. He was real, and Elizabeth never forgot that. When Dwight Eisenhower became president in 1953, Elizabeth had just ascended to the throne. But this was not a new relationship.
This was partly born out of World War II and her relationship with US President Eisenhower.
Was always undefined, but her impact undeniable. America's affection and affinity for the Queen.
Elizabeth and Eisenhower already knew each other from World War II, when he served as Supreme Allied Commander of the forces that liberated Europe. She had watched him lead the largest military operation in human history. She had seen him bear the weight of decisions that determined whether millions would live or die, and she respected him enormously for it. When Eisenhower visited Balmoral, the Queen's private Scottish estate, she did something extraordinary. She gave him her personal recipe for drop scones. Now, this might sound trivial, but you need to understand what it meant. Elizabeth guarded her private life with ferocious intensity. She shared almost nothing personal with anyone outside her immediate circle. Giving Eisenhower that recipe was the royal equivalent of handing over her diary. It meant she trusted him. It meant she considered him a friend. Their correspondence continued for years after his presidency ended, warm and familiar in a way her exchanges with most world leaders never were. Elizabeth saw in Eisenhower a kindred spirit, someone who understood the loneliness of command, the burden of duty, and the importance of keeping your emotions hidden while the world watched your every move. He was one of the few presidents she genuinely loved. And then came the Kennedys, and everything went wrong. John F. Kennedy and his wife Jackie visited Buckingham Palace in June 1961, and by all accounts it was a disaster. Not publicly, of course.
John F. Kennedy invites you to visit
The presidential palace there has all the history of that country in it.
The photographs showed smiles and handshakes. The press releases praised Anglo-American friendship. But behind closed doors, the chemistry was toxic. Jackie Kennedy, with her perfectly coiffed hair and designer wardrobe, reportedly found the Queen pretty heavy-going, and the feeling was absolutely mutual. Elizabeth was not impressed by the Kennedys. She found Jackie's glamour overwhelming, perhaps even a bit vulgar. The effortless charm that dazzled America felt to Elizabeth like performance rather than substance. These were not serious people. They were celebrities playing at politics. JFK himself failed to connect with her. For all his charisma, he seemed more interested in projecting an image than in genuine conversation. He was polished but distant, always calculating how things would play in the press rather than simply being present in the room. Elizabeth had spent her entire life surrounded by people performing versions of themselves. She could spot inauthenticity from across a crowded ballroom, and JFK triggered every alarm she had. There was also a deeper tension. The Kennedys represented a new kind of American power. Youthful, media-savvy, almost Hollywood in their appeal. They were as much celebrities as they were political figures, and Elizabeth instinctively distrusted that combination. Her world was built on protocol and restraint, on centuries of tradition that existed precisely to prevent the cult of personality from overwhelming institutions. The Kennedys seemed to represent the opposite: flash over substance, image over duty. Jackie later wrote about the evening with notable lack of enthusiasm, describing Buckingham Palace as stuffy and the conversation as stilted. Elizabeth never spoke of the Kennedys with any warmth at all. They were not enemies. There was no open hostility, but they remained firmly in the category of foreign leaders she had to tolerate rather than people she actually wanted to know. Lyndon B. Johnson holds a strange distinction in this story. He is the only president Elizabeth never actually met.
President Johnson is a busy man.
Too busy to talk to his oldest ally. Historically, the holder of this office has the warmest relationship.
Despite serving nearly 6 years in the White House, scheduling conflicts and circumstances meant their paths never crossed. It is a bizarre gap in her otherwise comprehensive record of American leaders, and it suggests something important. These meetings were not automatic. They required effort, timing, and mutual interest. Whatever the reasons, Johnson and Elizabeth simply never made it happen. Some historians speculate the Vietnam War made a royal visit politically complicated. Others suggest the timing just never worked out. Either way, LBJ remains the blank space in Elizabeth's presidential scorecard. The anxious, the accidental, and the unforgivable, Richard Nixon had met Elizabeth multiple times, first as Eisenhower's vice president, then later as president himself.
President Nixon's visit were his encouraging remarks about the United States' relations with Britain, a really warm tribute to that special relationship.
Their relationship was cordial, professional, and utterly without warmth. Elizabeth respected Nixon's intelligence and his understanding of world affairs. He was serious, knowledgeable, and treated her with appropriate deference. But something about him made her deeply uncomfortable. Nixon was intense in a way that exhausted her. He seemed to carry a cloud of anxiety wherever he went, constantly calculating his next move, never able to simply relax and be present. Elizabeth preferred leaders who could laugh in her presence, who could make conversation without treating every word as a chess move. Nixon was incapable of that. Even in private moments, he seemed to be performing, always watching himself from the outside, always aware of how he was being perceived. She thought Nixon was competent, but fundamentally troubled. A man so consumed by politics and his own insecurities that he could never simply be present in a room. When Watergate destroyed his presidency, Elizabeth watched with the same detached observation she brought to most political drama. She was not surprised. She had sensed something dark in him from the beginning. The man who could not relax eventually destroyed himself, just as she had quietly suspected he might. Gerald Ford was the opposite. His brief presidency coincided with Elizabeth's.
President Ford and Queen Elizabeth come together. They both represent healing the nation, restoring integrity to public office.
1976 state visit to America, celebrating the bicentennial of American independence, and she found him genuinely refreshing. Ford did not try to impress her. He did not perform for the cameras. He was exactly who he appeared to be, a decent, straightforward man who had stumbled into the presidency and was doing his best under impossible circumstances. At a state dinner in the White House, Ford did something that made headlines around the world. He asked the Queen to dance. She accepted. And for a few minutes, the monarch and the accidental president swayed across the dance floor together. Photographs from that evening show Elizabeth genuinely smiling. Not the diplomatic smile she deployed for cameras, but something real. Ford had approached her without excessive reverence or nervous awkwardness. He treated her like a person rather than an institution, and she responded to that with visible warmth. Ford's lack of pretension put her at ease in a way that more polished politicians could not. He was not trying to be anything other than himself, and Elizabeth found that enormously appealing. She thought he was a good man, even if history would not remember him as a great president. Sometimes being good was enough. Jimmy Carter committed one of the most infamous breaches of royal protocol in modern history, and Elizabeth never forgave him for it. The Georgia peanut farmer turned president had a casual, folksy style that simply did not translate to royal company. He treated protocol as quaint tradition rather than the carefully constructed framework that allowed Elizabeth to navigate thousands of public interactions without constant awkwardness. And then came the moment that defined their entire relationship. At a formal event, Carter greeted the Queen Mother, Elizabeth's own mother, with a kiss on the lips. The room went silent. You simply did not do that. You did not touch royalty beyond a handshake, and you certainly did not kiss the Queen Mother on the mouth like she was your aunt at a family reunion. The Queen Mother handled it with characteristic grace, but Elizabeth was furious. Not publicly, of course. She was far too professional to make a scene, but the warmth she might have offered Carter evaporated in that single moment. Elizabeth found Carter's informality presumptuous. His folksy charm, which Americans found endearing, grated on her nerves. He repeatedly crossed lines that other presidents instinctively respected, treating centuries of tradition as obstacles to be ignored, rather than boundaries that existed for good reason. She thought Carter meant well. Meaning well was not enough. His good intentions did not excuse his clumsiness, and his casual approach felt disrespectful even when it was not intended that way. Their relationship remained cool throughout his presidency, correct but distant, defined entirely by what Carter got wrong rather than what he got right. Elizabeth was relieved when his term ended. The Hollywood cowboy who stole her heart, and then there was Ronald Reagan. If any American president could claim to be Elizabeth's favorite, Reagan would be the leading candidate. Their connection was immediate, genuine, and built on something neither politics nor protocol could manufacture. They both loved horses. Reagan visited Windsor Castle in 1982, and Elizabeth did something she reserved for very few people on Earth. She took him riding through the grounds of the estate. This was not a brief photo opportunity or a ceremonial trot around the courtyard. They rode together for over an hour, cantering through the English countryside, two people who happened to lead nations, but who connected over something far simpler. For Elizabeth, who had loved horses since childhood, this was as intimate as any conversation. Reagan understood horses. He understood the bond between rider and animal, the quiet communication that did not require words. That shared passion created a foundation their relationship would build on for years. But it was more than horses. Reagan made Elizabeth laugh, really laugh. His Hollywood charm, his ease in front of cameras, his ability to tell a story and land a punchline, these were qualities she genuinely appreciated. After decades of stiff diplomatic exchanges and world leaders who seemed terrified of making a mistake in her presence, here was someone who could make her smile without trying too hard. He was relaxed, confident, and completely comfortable in his own skin. The personal connection extended beyond their official meetings. Elizabeth and Reagan corresponded privately, and their letters had a warmth that went far beyond diplomatic niceties. When Reagan was shot in 1981, Elizabeth sent a personal message of concern that reflected genuine worry, not just formal obligation. When she visited the United States, Reagan rolled out every possible welcome. Their friendship continued even after Reagan left office. And when he died in 2004, Elizabeth's tribute was notably warm, reflecting a relationship that had transcended their official roles entirely. George H.W. Bush represented a welcome return to the kind of old-school American leadership Elizabeth understood and respected. She genuinely liked him. He reminded her of the wartime generation she had grown up around, men who understood duty, discretion, and proper behavior, without needing to be told. Bush had been a Navy pilot in World War II, an ambassador, a CIA director.
George H.W. Bush and his many years of service to this country. David Martin tonight shares the story of how it all began for the former president as a young naval aviator in the Pacific during World War II.
He knew how the world worked and he conducted himself accordingly. Bush and his wife Barbara visited the Queen multiple times, and Elizabeth found them both delightful company. Barbara especially won her over, another woman who had spent decades in the public eye while maintaining her dignity and sense of humor. The two couples got along easily without any of the awkwardness or cultural misunderstandings that had plagued other presidential visits. Elizabeth thought Bush was the kind of man who would never embarrass himself or his country. There were no dramatic moments, no breaches of etiquette, no awkward incidents to smooth over. In some ways, that is the highest compliment she could give. Her best relationships with presidents were often the ones that generated no headlines at all, just quiet mutual respect between people who understood each other's worlds. Bill Clinton complicated things. On a personal level, he was charming enough, charismatic, intelligent, able to work a room like few politicians before or since. Elizabeth could see why Americans loved him, but she did not trust him. There was something about Clinton that felt slippery to her, too smooth, too eager to please everyone at once. He reminded her of politicians she had known her entire life, who would say whatever you wanted to hear and then do whatever suited them. And then there was the Jerry Adams situation. Clinton had granted a visa to Adams, the leader of Sinn Féin, over fierce British objections. For Elizabeth, whose own cousin Lord Mountbatten had been murdered by the IRA, this was not just a policy disagreement, it was personal. She felt Clinton had prioritized American political calculations over the murder of British citizens, including someone she had loved. Elizabeth never let that resentment show publicly. She was far too professional for that, but the warmth she had shown Reagan, the warmth she would later show others, was notably absent with Clinton. She found him charming, but fundamentally unreliable. Their relationship functioned as diplomacy required, but Elizabeth kept her distance. She had learned to recognize men like Clinton, and she did not let them get close. The Queen, the presidents, and the secrets she never spoke. George W. Bush brought his own brand of Texas informality to his meetings with Elizabeth, and surprisingly, she absolutely loved it. During a 2007 speech at the White House, Bush made a verbal stumble that would become legendary. He accidentally suggested that the Queen had visited America in 1776 rather than 1976. He caught himself mid-sentence, glanced at Elizabeth, and quipped that she had given him a look only a mother could give. The Queen's response was perfect, a dry, perfectly timed comment that brought the entire room to laughter. She handled his mistake with such grace that it actually strengthened their relationship rather than damaging it. Elizabeth found Bush genuinely endearing. Yes, he made mistakes. Yes, he sometimes stumbled over his words or forgot the proper protocol. But he did not take himself too seriously, and neither, in her own way, did she. Bush could laugh at himself, and Elizabeth appreciated that enormously. So many world leaders were so concerned with their dignity that they became stiff and exhausting to be around. Bush was the opposite, relaxed, self-deprecating, genuinely warm. She also respected that he did not pretend to be something he was not. Bush was a Texan through and through, and he never tried to become someone more sophisticated for royal company. Elizabeth had spent her life surrounded by people performing versions of themselves. Bush's authenticity was refreshing. She thought he was a good man doing a difficult job, and she enjoyed his company far more than she had expected to. Barack Obama's relationship with Elizabeth might be the most surprising success story of her entire reign. On paper, they had nothing in common. Different generations, different backgrounds, different worldviews. Obama was a progressive politician who had grown up far from any royal tradition. Elizabeth was the embodiment of monarchy itself, and yet something clicked between them almost immediately. The moment everyone remembers came in 2009 during the Obama's first visit to Buckingham Palace.
President Barack Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama beginning a 2-day state visit at Buckingham Palace.
At a reception, Michelle Obama did something that made headlines around the world. She put her arm around the Queen, It was a breach of protocol that shocked the room. You were not supposed to touch the Queen beyond a handshake. It simply was not done. Aides froze. Photographers captured the moment. And then something extraordinary happened. Elizabeth reciprocated. She put her own arm around Michelle in return. For a woman who had spent her entire life maintaining careful physical and emotional boundaries, it spoke volumes. Elizabeth liked the Obamas, genuinely liked them. Not as a diplomatic obligation, not as foreign leaders she had to tolerate, but as people she actually wanted to spend time with. Subsequent visits only deepened the connection. When the Obamas returned to Britain, there was an ease between them that observers consistently noted. Real laughter, real conversation, real warmth. Elizabeth seemed to relax around them in a way she rarely did with world leaders. They talked not just about policy and state matters, but about family, about their children, about life. When Elizabeth died in 2022, both Barack and Michelle Obama released statements that went beyond diplomatic courtesy. They spoke about her as someone they had known and admired personally, someone who had shown them kindness and humor when she had no obligation to do so. Their connection was proof that age, background, and politics do not have to determine a relationship. Sometimes people just get along. Donald Trump's state visit in 2018 was one of the most controversial of Elizabeth's entire reign. Massive protests erupted across the United Kingdom, with demonstrators flooding the streets of London. A giant balloon depicting Trump as a baby floated above Parliament. Politicians debated whether he should have been invited at all. Through it all, Elizabeth remained publicly gracious. She hosted Trump at Windsor Castle, walked with him past the honor guard, and conducted herself with perfect professionalism. She had hosted controversial figures before. It was part of the job. Personal feelings did not enter into it, at least not visibly, but small moments told a different story. During the inspection of the guard, Trump walked directly in front of Elizabeth. It was a breach of protocol that forced the Queen of England to awkwardly sidestep around the President of the United States. Whether it was ignorance of royal custom or simple carelessness, it was noticed by everyone watching. Elizabeth's expression flickered, just for a moment, before her diplomatic mask returned. Body language analysts studied footage of their interactions obsessively, noting the absence of the warmth Elizabeth had shown other presidents. There were no genuine smiles, no moments of shared laughter, none of the ease she had displayed with Reagan or the Obamas. Elizabeth likely did not approve of Trump, his brash style, his disregard for protocol, the constant controversy that surrounded him.
US President Donald Trump and his wife Melania are at the receiving end of online criticism for his disrespectful failure to follow royal protocol when he met the Queen last Friday.
All of it clashed with everything she valued, but you would never hear her say so. Elizabeth had survived decades on the throne precisely because she never let her personal opinions become public record. What you could observe was what she did not do. No horseback rides through Windsor, no personal recipe exchanges, no invitations that went beyond what diplomacy strictly required. None of the gestures she had offered to presidents she genuinely connected with. The absence of warmth was, in its own way, a statement. Joe Biden was the last American president Elizabeth would ever meet. They saw each other at the G7 summit in Cornwall in 2021, just over a year before her death. Elizabeth liked Biden. He reminded her of the kind of president she got along with best. Experienced, respectful of institutions, comfortable with protocol without being stiff about it. Biden had been in politics for nearly 50 years. He understood how to conduct himself around world leaders, and he treated Elizabeth with genuine warmth rather than nervous deference. It was a brief encounter, but a meaningful one. Biden spoke highly of her afterward, describing her as gracious and sharp despite her advanced age. Elizabeth, for her part, seemed to genuinely enjoy the conversation. There was an ease between them, a sense that they were two people who had seen a lot of history and understood each other's burdens. She thought Biden was a decent man, steady, experienced, perhaps a bit past his prime, but still committed to doing the job properly. It was a fitting final chapter in her remarkable 7-decade relationship with American leadership. The last president she met was, in many ways, exactly the kind she had always preferred. Someone who respected tradition, valued relationships, and did not need to be the center of attention. Biden represented the qualities she had admired in Eisenhower, in Bush Sr., in the presidents who understood that leadership was about service rather than spectacle. Their meeting was brief, but it closed the circle beautifully. For 70 years, Queen Elizabeth watched, measured, and judged. Every handshake, every invitation, every fleeting glance carried meaning. But much of it remains hidden, waiting for those willing to look closely. She revealed herself not in speeches or interviews, but in gestures, laughter, and the rare moments of genuine connection. The question now isn't just who she liked or disliked, it's what her silent judgments tell us about power, diplomacy, and the human side of history. How much of the world's most consequential decisions were shaped by someone who spoke so little, yet observed so much? And how many other secrets are quietly influencing the corridors of power, hidden in plain sight? The story of Elizabeth and the presidents is far from over. History is still whispering, and the next revelation could change everything we think we know about the woman behind the crown.